this is Matt coming at you from Metro Fitness 51. I'm here to talk to you today about flexibility for the bottom catch of a snatch or the overhead squat. So I'd like to pose a question to start off this conversation. And what is the most important piece of flexibility for the overhead squat? Actually, it's a trick question because you need to be flexible from toe all the way to your head, all over your body in order to really maximize the value of your overhead squat or the catch position of your snatch. So we're going to talk about some of the relationships of flexibility and what it does to your overhead squat and how you can help to shore some of these movements up and what you need to focus on for your own flexibility when you come into the gym. So first things first, let's start towards the upper body and then we'll work our way down. Starting with external rotation of the shoulder joint. So in order to fully support weight, you need to have those shoulders externally rotated, which means I want to see your armpits, or you want to try and take that elbow and point it straight forward. What this does is stack your joints on top of each other. So as you can see, my elbow is up and my shoulder is up. So I'm not really actively holding the weight. I'm letting my joints take all that stress, and I'm just supporting it through my shoulders and my arms. This helps support the weight because I'm not actually actively having to hold the weight. If I asked you to hold weight over your head, you wouldn't hold it bent because you would wear out very quickly. You would want to straighten it out and use your joints to stack on top of each other. So at all costs, we want to keep that relationship consistent. And if you are somebody who cannot straighten your arms with external rotation, that is where you need to start your mobility straight off the bat. So if you're in that boat, you're probably having problems with your catch of your clean, front rack of your squat, and you're getting tight on pretty much every movement that involves your shoulder joint. So if this is you, if you have a hard time accomplishing this movement right here, you need to focus on your shoulders and your back, biceps, triceps, everything in your upper body needs to get more flexible so that you can fully extend and externally rotate. So, moving down the body a little bit, core stability is absolutely key. Even though we don't necessarily need too much flexibility in our core or our back, we have got to keep it tight or the structural stability of your squat goes completely away. Other thing I want to focus on your core is that if you have some flexibility issues in other areas, which you do not want to do, is compromised by overextending your back. Overextending your back is just as bad or worse than hunching over. Anytime you break that neutral spine and add load to it, you're going to cause a great deal of stress on your back and on the discs of your spine. So do not hurt your back and make sure that you have a good neutral spine and make sure that you work on really tightening up your core. So moving further down the body, we've got the hips and the glutes and everything that's attached to this pelvic girdle. Everything from your hips down to your knees attaches at some way, shape, or form to your pelvic girdle. Hamstrings come up to your pelvic girdle through your butt cheeks. Your butt is attached to that pelvic girdle. Everything about your quads is attached to that pelvic girdle. So the hips and the pelvic girdle is of absolutely vital importance. So, because I am a sufferer of tight hips, I will show you my overhead squat and when it starts to get a little bit squirrely because of my tight hips. So, when I go up top with this weight, external rotation is easy for me to maintain in this position. Dropping down a few inches, my torso is perfectly vertical, but once I get to about this point, my hips start getting tight and I have to compromise by throwing my chest forward a little bit to accomplish that squat. At that point, I have to actually have a little bit of more of extra mobility in my shoulders. So when then I start coming down, my shoulders can accommodate so that I can keep that weight in line with my heels. So if I didn't have that shoulder flexibility, I would need to stop my overhead squat right about here. But since I have relatively decent shoulder mobility, I can actually make it further down because my torso is actually going to pitch forward slightly my shoulders can accommodate so that I can maintain that balance. Ideally, however, if your hips and your glutes and everything in your pelvis is flexible enough, you should be able to keep your torso perfectly vertical, like many of the elite level Olympic weightlifters. Simply put, they're not going to hold that much weight over their head if they didn't have really phenomenal hip flexibility and the ability to keep their torso perfectly upright. So I can actually mimic that with a pole. So right where I would start to pitch forward in my squat, if I had something to balance on, I could actually maintain that perfect torso relationship and keep my chest perfectly vertical, eliminating the need to actually have that extra shoulder mobility if I was pitching forward. So hips and butt flexibility is absolutely crucial, and you gotta have it. And if you do, you actually don't need quite as much range of motion and flexibility in your shoulders. So moving further down the body, we've got the calves and the ankles. So an often missed body part when it comes to flexibility. People think, oh, your ankles, are you really using that to squat? Absolutely. The reason we use Olympic weightlifting shoes is to actually help with this ankle stability and ankle flexibility. Many of you, as you start to go down in your squat, all of a sudden, your heels will start to turn in, your ankles will start to collapse, and you start to pick your heels off the floor. If you don't have flexible ankles, you won't be able to drop into that squat without your heels starting to lift up. So ankle flexibility is absolutely crucial. Olympic weightlifting shoes will help tremendously, but it's not going to solve the problem altogether. So if your ankles are inflexible, then your entire system has to pitch forward in order to accommodate for those tight ankles, which will change an added range of motion for your shoulders, added range of motion for your hips. Ankles are arguably some of the most important joints in that overhead squat. So, moving back to the original question, what is the most important piece of flexibility to have for the overhead squat? And the answer is whatever you need for your particular body to improve your overhead squat. Everybody can use some more mobility. Work with your coaches. See about some corrective exercises to actually shore up some of your individual weaknesses so that you can get better at your overhead squat, and hopefully use the movement or the catch and snatch just a little bit more effectively. But safety is always first, so at no point should you be pushing yourself past a range of motion that's not natural to you. If you need weights to push your shoulders past where they would naturally go, you can guarantee that there's going to be some stress caused in that joint. Same thing with your hips, same thing with your ankles. Do not load yourself to put yourself in a compromising position, because injury is going to be waiting for you down the end of that tunnel. Remember, most of us are CrossFitting for life, not for sport, so make sure the scales that you use, the movements that you use are sustainable for your particular body, and you do not hurt yourself. At no point do we want to see injury, so please listen to your coaches. We don't want to take movements away from you. We just want to see you leave in the same condition that you came in, which is a healthy, happy individual, so you can go back home to your families injury-free and not aggravate your body. So that's it for now for Metro Fitness 51. We'll come back for you with some corrective exercises for these different body parts so that you can learn to mobilize your particular weaknesses. That's it.